So we're going to go in now and talk about the slope formula. If there's a certain formula that we can use in order to find slope given a line. And so your learning chart is I can find the slope by using the slope formula. So our key concept here, it says that if we're given two coordinate points, okay, two coordinate points that we could put on a graph like x1, y1, okay, that just identifies two coordinates, and x2, y2, that's a second coordinate. Then the slope, and that little blank right there, is m. We use the variable m to identify slope a lot, okay? So if the slope m of a line can be calculated using the formula then, m, again, that means slope, is equal to our y2 minus y1 divided by our x2 minus x1. So in order to find the slope of a line given two coordinate points, the first thing we need to do is identify which coordinate is going to be x1 and y1 and which coordinate is going to be x2, y2. Okay, so identify which coordinate is that blank right there. And then the second step of this, after you identify which one's x1, which one's y1, which one's x2, y2, then you're going to substitute the coordinates into the slope formula and solve for m. Alright, so let's do this first example here. The first example says to find the slope of the line through the pair of points negative 8, 3 and 12, negative 2. Alright, so we're using our slope formula. Okay, and I'm just going to rewrite this real quick. Remember, our slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And the very first thing that we need to do is identify what are we going to use as our x1, y1, which one are we going to use as our x2, y2. Okay, I always feel like it's easier just to do it in order. So we're going to do x1, y1, x2, y2. Those are going to be our our coordinate points, the values that we're going to use to put in place in this formula here. So now we just plug those into our formula here. Remember our y2, so it's y2 minus y1, so negative 2 minus 3. Negative 2 minus 3. Divided by our x2, 12, minus our x1, negative 8. So 12 minus a negative 8. Okay, and what that equals, negative 2 minus 3 is a negative 5. And 12 minus a negative 8, remember if you're subtracting a negative, that means you're adding it. 12 minus a negative 8 means we're adding it, so 12 plus 8 is 20, and this fraction reduces to be negative 1/4. So our slope, m, is equal to negative 1/4. All right, example 2 switches it up on us a little bit. It tells us that one of our coordinates is negative 2y. We don't know what this one is. We don't know what the y is. It tells us that the other coordinate is 7, 6, and then it gives us the slope, and that the slope is just 1. So we have to use our slope formula again. Okay, I'll rewrite it maybe one more time here. We've got m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Okay, first thing we need to do is identify which one we're going to use as x1, y1, which one's going to be x2, y2. So that's what I'm going to identify as x1, y1, x2, y2. And so we're going to plug that into this formula. Now we already know our slope is equal to 1. So 1 is going to be equal, 1 instead of m now, 1 is going to be equal to our y2, 6 minus our y1, which is just y. So 6 minus y, divided by y2, 7 minus x1, our negative 2, so 7 minus a negative 2. And we can simplify this a little bit more, right? 1 is then going to equal to 6 minus y. And 7 minus a negative 2 means it's adding, so we got 9. Okay, at this point it's just solving for our y still. So we have to multiply by 9 on both sides. We end up getting 9 is equal to 6 minus y. We'll subtract 6 from both sides. Get 3 is equal to a negative y, but we don't like a negative y there. And so here I'm gonna go back up. We're gonna rewrite this up here. 3 equals negative y. We don't like negative y, so we're going to multiply by a negative 1. Because when we multiply by a negative 1, what happens here is that we get a positive y. We get a positive y. And negative 1 times 3 is going to be a negative 3. So the value of y that we were looking for is a negative 3. Alright, so example 3, it says to find the slope of the line -1 plus 6x equals -y. Okay, so here's what we have to do. We don't have any coordinates that are given for us, so what we actually have to do here is we have to solve for our x and y intercepts. Remember, we did that a little while ago, and if we do that, we can solve for x and y intercepts, and that'll help us because then we will have 2 coordinate points, okay? And so remember, if we were trying to solve for our x and y intercepts, we can just write the equation twice. Write the equation twice. And on one equation, get rid of, sorry, this is supposed to be an x here, get rid of the x, and on the other equation, get rid of the y. Okay, and then solve for those variables, right? So when we do that, when we solve for the y here, we're going to get what our y-intercept is. When we solve for the x over here, we're going to get our x-intercept. So let's solve for the y-intercept first. I'm just going to rewrite this. We've got -1 equals a -y. And again, we don't like that negative y, so we're going to multiply by a -1 on both sides, because when we do that, -y times a -1 is just a positive y. And -1 times a -1 is just going to be a positive 1. So that means our y-intercept is at 1. Y is equal to 1. So that coordinate point is 0, 1. Okay? We know it passes through when y is 1. That's why we know x is going to be 0, y is going to be 1. Now over here, we're going to do the exact same thing, except this is going to be 0 on this other side, right? -1 plus 6x is equal to 0. So solving for x, we're going to add 1 to both sides. We get 6x is equal to 1. Divide by 6, and we are left with x equals 1/6. Now we don't need to put that in the decimal form. We can keep that as a fraction. X is equal to 1/6. And that means that our coordinate for this is 1/6, 0. That's our coordinate. Okay, now we have 2 coordinates. Now they may not be the prettiest of coordinates, right? But we have 2 coordinates, and now we can use our slope formula. Remember, slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And so we can just plug these numbers into this equation. Let's go ahead and call this x1, y1. We'll call this one x2, y2. And we're going to substitute those numbers into this equation over here, all right? So what we've got here then is 0 minus 1 divided by 1/6 minus 0, which just solves to be -1 in the top, and 1/6 minus 0 is just 1/6. Okay, now this is what is called a complex fraction, and I don't know if you guys remember how to do this or not, but essentially what we're doing is we're dividing 2 fractions. Remember, this numerator could also be written as the fraction -1 over 1 divided by 1/6. We're dividing 2 fractions, and instead of just trying to divide 2 fractions, what we can do is we can do the flip multiply, right? That's what that is. Flip multiply is where you take your first fraction, which was a -1 over 1, and instead of dividing, we're going to multiply it by the reciprocal, the flip, of that other fraction, which is 6 over 1. Okay, and then -1 times 6 is just a -6. 1 times 1 is just 1, so our slope then, m, is equal to -6. And we found the slope.